kind, almost difficult to talk. This Shakti, life, the power that pushes the green stem and wags the dog's tail, grows your nails, does everything all at the same time. Now,
Guess who discovered the best definition of how to approach a fermata? It was Beethoven. He instructed his pupil Czerny, every time you see a fermata in my music, always make a retard toward it, even when I don't say so. Do you realize how important that is? That doesn't only mean in Beethoven's music. That means for all of music. Never come to a screeching halt when you see a fermata, but always make a retard into it as follows. Guess who discovered the best definition of how to approach a fermata? It was Beethoven. He instructed his pupil Czerny, every time you
Who told you that? The ones who think they're small. Everyone here is a mirage dream character of the one dreaming, the one self. I know, you know,
The first letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Aleph. Aleph. The standard Hebrew script is called the square script, which means simply that each letter fits itself more or less into a square box like this. Now, just like with English, Hebrew can be printed with many fonts, and the one that I'm using here, called SBL Hebrew, is a standard book font. But I'm going to teach you how to write each letter with a simple handwritten block script that doesn't include all the serifs and squigglies. Aleph is written with just 3 strokes, a diagonal and 2 shorter strokes. I'll diagram each letter for you like this, showing the order and direction of each stroke, but then I'll use the chalk to let you see the letter written, like this. 1, 2, 3. You might want to pause the video at this point and practice writing Aleph on your own a few times. Now let's turn our attention to the sound of the letter. There are actually 2 more or less silent consonants in Hebrew, and Aleph happens to be one of them.
Fluent arpeggio playing. There are tons of videos on this topic and there are some really great ones. But, and that's incredible actually, I have understood that I still might be able to share my own way of efficient playing that is slightly or very much different of what I've seen before. The main drama about all this arpeggio thing happens between the thumb and the wrist. Now, a very small insight from my teaching experience. Most of issues with arpeggios come from the fact that most of people try to connect notes literally while changing the hand position. For example, if you would play something like that, you'd notice a huge amount of tension in your thumb. And in the first case, so in the first technique, we would have it falls down from the distance, and in the second case, it goes very close. But we still don't accumulate tension or any awkward hand movements because we still release the last finger of the hand position. In this case, it's the third finger, but it might be also the fourth, depending on the arpeggio. But we may still take another saving pill to ensure that we don't have that accent. For this, I'm going to press my thumb in a very gentle way. Instead of hitting the key, I try to dive into it. Very gently, but with an absolutely released thumb. And then, and this is a key point here, I use a tenuto on the second finger right after my thumb. And tenuto for me means that I still go to the very bottom of the key with an absolutely released arm, but feeling a very strong support in this knuckle and in that one. As you see, my finger is very strong here, but my wrist is absolutely relaxed. So I use it in order to cushion the hit a little bit. And together with the thumb, and this tenuto is kind of an anchor point for me. So when I change position, of course I'm exaggerating right now, but I just try to demonstrate what kind of feeling I try to get in my hand. This tenuto allows me to maintain a better control over the keyboard. The thing is that with some practice you might be able to train some reaction, and even if you'd hit your thumb slightly louder than intended, you just compensate it with a slightly more intensive tenuto on the second finger. This is especially useful in some less conventional arpeggios, like in the Chopin's Last Prelude. So you start to go over your thumb. Here you change your position, but then release the thumb actually before you get tense. So you're not trying to connect that physically. Because this is what would cause a lot of problems, and you see that my elbow wants to jump up and everything goes wrong. I fold my thumb to that extent when I might start accumulating tension, and then I just release it. Release, release. And then you may use some anchor points. Those are the points where you use tenuto a little bit to stay in contact with the keyboard. So, for example, when I change position here, I overfly that distance, hit the fifth finger very gently, and fourth still very gently, and then I try to feel more tenuto on the third finger and the second. Because those two fingers, they are the strongest, so it's very comfortable to grasp that passage, to grasp that position using those two fingers. You may exaggerate at first that with your wrist, so, and then your wrist goes down, and then again up, overfly, down, up. So then of course you would minimize that movement very gently and force still. When I change position here, I overfly that distance, hit the fifth finger very gently and force still very gently, and then I try to feel more tenuto on the third finger and the second. Because those two fingers, they are the strongest, so it's very comfortable to grasp that passage, to grasp that position using those two fingers. You may exaggerate at first that with your wrist, so, and then your wrist goes down, and then again up, overfly, down, up. Then, of course, you would minimize that movement, but still you would have this comfortable feeling in the hand that you really control things, that you really have those anchor points where you can stabilize yourself and release the tension in the wrist a bit. And this is actually the reason why we can't really learn from the recordings, from the video recordings even by great pianists, because such things that I was just explaining right now, they are usually minimized to that extent that the performer feels the difference. But when you observe this playing from the side, you don't really notice what are they doing. From my teaching experience, a huge amount of problems with such passages comes from an attempt to play them by holding the weight of the hand and trying to play all the notes equally lightly or equally worked throughly. But in fact, it's way more efficient, upon my opinion, to play the first note of each position with less stress or less weight a little bit, finding anchor points somewhere in the middle of the hand position. And now, as I promised, a few words about legato playing. Although we associate legato often with the physical connection with the fingers, the most important thing is how it actually sounds. And there are a couple of tricks. So when you play arpeggio in a fluent tempo, using the second technique that I explained, avoiding accents on the thumb and providing tenuto at some anchor points, these gaps between hand positions when I fly over, those gaps, they won't be even noticeable. With a gentle pedal, you can polish that even better. What I'm doing here, I'm trying to take pedal somewhere in the end of each position. So like here, here, here. Because, for example, I don't want that the whole passage would sound on pedal. For example, that would be too much for me. But I still try to improve my legato using the pedal. But what would definitely destroy your legato, those accents or awkward hand movements that would make you sound also clumsy. So the fingering is very important, of course. For example, I was feeling very awkward in this spot for weeks. Because I was using a very weird fingering, as I have understood later. So I was using 5-3-2-1, one hand position, and then 5-3-2-1 again. And you see this. So I was using 5-3-2-1, one hand position, and then 5-3-2-1 again. And you see this leap from the first finger toward the fifth finger. It was very awkward, actually, and I just couldn't get used to it, although I practiced a lot. So at the end, I changed my fingering to the 5-4-3-2-1, and then 3-2-1. So, and then this distance is very wide, but nevertheless, it feels much more comfortable. So I resolved this problem in 5 minutes just by changing the fingering. Then the principle of muscle release helps a lot, especially in some wide, uncomfortable spots like Chopin's first etude, like this one. Like many people struggle with this spot, and I also used to struggle with it a lot, because you have a very hard choice, either to play it with a 1, 2, 3, 5. So then you have a very wide distance between your second and third finger that feels very much wrong, even if you have a huge hand or very flexible fingers. I have quite flexible fingers, but still it's really weird for me. Or you have to play like 1, 2, 4, and then jump to the fifth finger, and this distance is even worse for your hand. So, but what I have chosen at the end is to play with 1, 2, 4, and then release my hand and move it very freely towards the fifth finger, and hit it kind of separately with a very short and precise hit. like that. So, and you may practice those spots, giving yourself a little bit of time to find this efficient movement for a leap. But very important to learn your hand to release immediately after the last note before the leap. So release, hit, release, hit, release, hit. And then you will diminish that distance a little bit by a little bit. But I have to say that there is also a lot of overachievement tendencies in piano playing that I find a bit weird lately, because people spend like countless hours in order to prove that they can play this very awkward passage with the most stupid fingering ever. And when I was a teenager, I also thought that this is actually the only way to play this passage. So I was practicing, and nevertheless, even after so many years, this spot is still the risky one. So I really have to like practice it every time if I want to perform the piece. Although reviewing the material for this video just this morning, I have understood that there is another way to play this very tricky passage, and it feels amazingly comfortable. And I don't really understand why nobody told me that there is an option like that. Because if your priorities are, first of all, an artistic value of the piece and an efficient practice in time use, if you don't want to spend countless hours on something that might be fixed like in 5 minutes, you could just play this passage with a different fingering. So for example, instead of that, or both of them feel so much like wrong actually. But if you would just regroup your hand positions and play them in a different way, let's say, so at the end you would have like 1, 3, and then you just rotate your wrist and move your hand as was explained before, and then rotate it back to the left and play a very simple figure like, and then further and further. And it feels so much better actually, even although I didn't warm up today and I just don't really feel in shape right now, but still I can play that without any problems. So please don't miss out the next video that I'm going to release. It's a small addition where I would explain some exercises for arpeggios that are used for professional piano training. I wish you a fruitful optimization of your piano skills that would not only improve your playing, but also that would free up a lot of time for all the things you love. Have fun playing piano. In this video, I will share with you a great strategy for building an arpeggio playing technique, which I have been able to develop recently thanks to my many-year interest in piano playing efficiency strategies and teaching students of all ages and levels. When experienced professional pianists play arpeggios, they do very similar motions because, and this is an important point for today's video, because arpeggio playing is basically a combination of a few basic motions, which then blend into one motion later. But what I have understood learning about different approaches to piano playing technique and observing different pianists is that every fine pianist uses their own proportion of these universal motions. So in this video, I will suggest you learn a strategy which will help you to dissect these motions, master each of them separately, and help you to develop a way of playing arpeggios which will be most comfortable for you. If you want to significantly improve your piano playing skills, get rid of tension and pain, improve dexterity and ability to practice efficiently, check out my courses dedicated to a healthy and efficient piano technique. In addition to my universal bestseller courses on Haydn and Brahms exercises, I have just released a detailed course on the most vibrant etudes by Carl Czerny from Opus 299, which will help you to build a more solid foundation before approaching advanced pieces such as Chopin or Rachmaninoff etudes. Buy this course within the first week starting today and get a reduced 50% price. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to use a valse of Frédéric Chopin in A minor, which of course many of you have heard and many of you have played. So it sounds like... So here we have this beautiful arpeggio passage, which of course gives hard time to many learners. And of course you can apply these principles and this technique for any possible arpeggios which you encounter in piano literature. And I have even an older video about arpeggio technique, about arpeggio exercise, which is used in professional training of pianists. So you can check that out as well. So before we even start with the training, there is one important thing to remember always, that when we play arpeggios, especially in a faster tempo, and especially when we have like a larger interval, like a fourth between positions, so we play 1, 2, 3, and then have a fourth between 3 and 1. You see, this is a wide interval. We never connect positions. We just fly them over, yeah? So there is no physical connection between positions. We don't play like this, yeah, because this causes that horrible elbow motion, which makes you sound clumsy and sets a very serious speed and smoothness limit. So what we do, we just fly them over these positions. We don't connect them physically. Even when we have a smaller interval, we nevertheless quite often, like for example in this one, we can connect it in a slower tempo if you have a good plasticity in the hand. But when you get faster, there's still no connection. You just release the finger, get into the next position. So this is just an important disclaimer before we start. And now let's start mastering this passage in steps. So at first, we're going to do a preparatory exercise, which will help you to get used and get comfortable with the idea that we don't connect positions, because this is kind of a psychological barrier which many learners have. Of course, we want to provide smoothness in our playing, so we start connecting positions. So we are going to get rid of that habit by learning this passage with the first method. So when you play these arpeggios, you focus on a comfortable weight transfer from finger to finger, making sure that you instantly release all the fingers that are done, and that you focus the tip of each finger, like nail joint and metacarpal joints are focused, yeah? And our wrist is, of course, at the level with the in our playing, so we start connecting positions. So we are going to get rid of that habit by learning this passage with the first method. So when you play these arpeggios, you focus on a comfortable weight transfer from finger to finger, making sure that you instantly release all the fingers that are done, and that you focus the tip of each finger, like nail joint and metacarpal joints are focused, yeah? And our wrist is, of course, at the level with the keys. But when you play the last note of this position, this B, you just release the finger and raise the forearm like that. And make sure that the fingers are completely relaxed. Do that in a tempo in which you can focus on that sensation. And then you just imagine that somebody replaces your hand toward the next position. You can help yourself with the left hand as well. And then dive properly in the thumb. Make sure that your wrist returns to the level with the keys, which will help you to support the thumb. And the thumb is, of course, also focused at the nail joint. So the thumb is never straight, it's never like that, but it's gently curved in the nail joint. And the wrist is at the level with the key. So you feel a comfortable pulling sensation for the thumb like that. But you don't connect these positions, and you just fly over, focusing on a sensation of relaxation between positions, and then equally supporting each finger like that. So again, we are not playing arpeggios like that. We are not doing vertical motions with the forearm when we play arpeggios. This is just a preparatory, very important preparatory step in order to make sure that you disconnect fingers, release them at the end of each position, and to make sure that you're not afraid to disconnect positions. So you practice like that first enough times, making sure that you start releasing the finger and moving the forearm right after you have reached the bottom of that third finger key, which you play with the third finger. So here, very smooth but quick motion, relaxation and quick motion, like that. Like that. So you play enough times like that in order to reach smoothness, playing this passage like that, in, let's say, medium tempo, something like that. You can move it even further, for example, till that tempo. As soon as you reach smoothness of playing with this method, you move to the next one. In the next one, we are not going to use any vertical motions. We are going to work on rotational elements, on a forearm rotation. So we still play 1, 2, 3, supporting each finger, but as soon as you hit 3, imagine that you want to play a glissando afterwards. That, and I actually suggest you to play a few times like that. So you reach the third finger and then you rotate the hand and you play glissando. So just you get the idea of the motion. And then we do the same motion, but we don't do glissando, obviously. So we just rotate the hand 90 degrees and move your forearm like that. And as soon as you feel that you have arrived to the next position, you rotate your hand back counterclockwise. And we really exaggerate each of these motions, pushing them to the extreme, let's say, in order to implement each of them fully. So you reach, let's say, a smooth middle tempo, making sure that you over-rotate your hand like that. But you see that your hand stays close. So I basically slide at the surface of the keys with my fingers. So we don't do the vertical motion anymore. So make sure that you can implement that motion properly and feel yourself quite secure, being able to play this passage smoothly, let's say in this tempo. In order to avoid harsh accents on the thumb, you just also support the fingers 2 and 3. So you play this arpeggio first on a very well embodied mezzo forte in order to make sure that you support all fingers like that. As soon as you feel comfortable with this, we move to the next motion, which is opening the elbow like that. So you push your elbow, you open your arm, which creates this kind of angle towards the keyboard. So your fingers are not aligned to the keys when you do that. And you do that when you play, when you approach the third finger, you already do that between fingers 2 and 3. So that motion allows you to approach the next key like this. So again, release the fingers, you just release the third finger quicker, opening the elbow and leaning on the next key properly. And when you lean on the thumb, you open the hand palm back, yeah? Like that. So we don't do rotation, we don't do vertical motions, we just do elbow opening. And as soon as you hit the thumb, boom, you open the hand palm again, which helps you to approach the next position with fingers 2 and 3. So make sure that you can play these arpeggios in a medium, fast tempo, just using this method. Each method helps you to focus on one thing at a time and make sure that you can reach smoothness in a medium or moderately fast tempo using each of them. Vertical motions, then rotational motions, and then staying horizontal but fast tempo, just using this method. Each method helps you to focus on one thing at a time and make sure that you can reach smooth. Thumb motion allows you to approach the next key like this. Arm, which creates this kind of angle. This arpeggio first on a very well embodied mezzo forte in order to make sure that you support all fingers like that. As soon as you feel comfortable with this, we move to the next motion, which is opening the elbow like that. So you push your elbow, you open your arm, which creates this kind of angle towards the keyboard, so your fingers are not aligned to the keys when you do that. And you do that when you approach the third finger. You already do that between fingers 2 and 3. So that motion allows you to approach the next key like this. So again, release the fingers. You just release the third finger quicker, opening the elbow and leaning on the next key properly. And when you lean on the thumb, you open the hand palm back, yeah? Like that. So we don't do rotation, we don't do vertical motions, we just do elbow opening. And as soon as you hit the thumb, boom, you open the hand palm again, which helps you to approach the next position with fingers 2 and 3. So make sure that you can play these arpeggios in a medium, fast tempo, just using this method. Each method helps you to focus on one thing at a time and make sure that you can reach smoothness in a medium or moderately fast tempo using each of them. Vertical motions, then rotational motions, and then staying horizontal but opening your elbow and adjusting your hand positions after the thumb. So these were 3 basic ways to learn these arpeggios, and before we get to the 4th one, forget everything we have been just doing. So just forget everything you did, and the next learning way, we are going just to play the first group, the first position, then release the third finger and land on the first and the second finger of the next group. So you land at a third, like that. But you don't think anymore how exactly you move between positions, you just solely release the third finger faster. And then make sure that you hit right the bottom of these keys, and you should feel a well-supported sensation here, because since we are disconnecting positions, we lose the contact with the keyboard. And this is exactly what many learners are afraid to do. They are afraid to leave the keys, to lose that attachment to the keys. So in order to regain that control, we have to be sure that we land properly at the next position using these fingers, like 1, 2, as anchors and as fingers where we really feel supported, grounded, feeling the bottom of the keys, making sure that we hang on these keys properly, focusing tips of the fingers. Yeah, so this is a very important, let's say, polishing stage for your arpeggio technique. And you go through the passage like that, just focusing on an instant relaxation. Release. While you fly over, your hands should be absolutely relaxed. Release, land. Like that. I suggest you to learn your arpeggio passages using this method a few days in a row, let's say 4 or 5 days, then make a break for a few days so your body kind of like forgets the sensation a bit, and then return to this method, learning your passages like this another few days, and I'm sure that you will feel a decent improvement. If you want to learn more efficiency tips, check out my courses. Please check out my playlist dedicated to piano tutorials on YouTube, which contains a lot of videos. And of course, you can always approach me about online lessons following the link in the description. Have fun playing piano, and see you next time. Legato is a very important skill in piano playing, one of the most important. The topic is huge, and there is no chance I can cover it within one video, because this topic deserves many dissertations, and usually it takes months of mutual work with the student in order to teach them play nice legato. But I nevertheless want to give you some hints, some principal, universal, general tips that you might use for starting your research, for starting your development in that direction. I dedicate a great attention to this skill when I work with students, and I actually do teach online. So if you are interested in a personalized treatment, if you would like to have online lessons with me, just check out the link in the description where you can contact me. When we see a slur in the score, a slur over a group of notes, the first thought that many of us might get is that we have to connect these notes with fingers, playing legato, and opposing that touch, that way of playing to, let's say, staccato.